you want your photos to go from something like this to something like this? Well, in this video, I'm going to share with you my 5 secret tips that I've built up over the last 6 years of shooting. If you implement all 5 tips, you're going to be absolutely unstoppable. But the last one is super important. You won't want to miss out on it, so please stick around. Tip number 1 is use unexpected reflections. When most people think of reflections, they tend to think of glass, like windows, or water, like puddles and lakes. But there are other reflective surfaces that create unique compositions. You can use sunglasses, you can use your phone, or if you have the money, you can buy glass prisms or Prism Effects lens filters, and they create the reflections and refractions for you. By looking for unique reflections, you're adding depth and character to photos that might not otherwise be that eventful. In order to make these shots as unique as possible, don't rely on reflections that are too cliched or overdone. Think outside the box, get creative and inspire your viewer. Another thing to be aware of is distortions. Sometimes distortions are great and they can create some really unique effects, but if they're not used correctly, it can be distracting, so just be wary of that. Reflections aren't the only way to add secret sauce to your photos. Another tip you've got to do is get crazy angles. One of the absolutely quickest ways to take your photos to the next level is to just climb stuff. Change your angle. Get a different perspective. Taking a photo from a different angle can absolutely transform a scene. This here is just a standard street photography shot from when I was in New Zealand. It's okay, it's passable, it's decent, but I was able to climb a huge ass tower. I'm pretty sure it's called Skyfall Tower. If I'm completely wrong, I'll just add the name here. Taking photos from that high up using a cheap telephoto lens honestly overhauled the whole New Zealand experience for me. Being able to shoot that high up and get such a unique perspective of New Zealand, the shots speak for themselves. Get creative. Don't be afraid to shoot on your back laying down in the rain. Don't be afraid to climb stuff. Don't be afraid to look like an idiot. Tilt your camera. Look for lines. Do as much creative stuff as possible, because that's where you truly come alive and that's where your vision truly comes out. But in order to stop your photos from being super boring, just avoid shooting everything from the same height. Mix it up, keep it diverse, and just change perspectives. I think one of the main points here as well is breaking the rules. Nothing great ever happens by following the rules all the time, so break them. If you really want to stand out, you should also play with motion blur. Motion blur isn't just for action sports. It really comes alive when you're doing panning shots with cars, as well as street photography. Even portraits can be amazing with motion blur. As you can see here, we have a shot of the city. Everything's in focus, everything is fine, it's a static image, it's passable, it's great. By intentionally dragging the shutter and panning while taking these photos, you can see that it conveys so much more movement. It adds just that extra bit of life into the image. Experiment with different ways to introduce motion blur into your scene, like portraits with flowing hair, or even a street scene with passing traffic, but you can overdo it. Motion blur is great when it's done tastefully. However, if you're just intentionally panning your camera, or you're trying to figure something out, figure out settings, you'll see that it becomes super chaotic and it's just too busy in order to appreciate. You'll also want to play around with different focus settings to try and figure out what's going to work best for the scene. This ensures that your subject is going to be tack sharp while blurring everything else that you want to be blurred. But even with motion blur, your photos still won't have that wow factor unless you try light painting. Light painting isn't just for night photography, although the times that I have tried light painting, it has been at night, except for that one time where I didn't, but no one's ever going to see that video. Each time that I've actually tried light painting, it's gone okay. It's more been down to equipment rather than the actual shot itself, but you can use light painting to add some really unique highlights to your image. Now, a standard portrait with just normal lighting is great. It's fine. It does the job. But once you start adding in elements of light painting, that's where things truly start to come alive. And the best part is that you don't need any extra or fancy equipment. All you need to do this is just a light source like a phone, an LED, or a torch, and you need to open up your shutter just a little bit longer than you normally would. Move the light source in different patterns and waves and ways, and seriously watch your mind be blown by the result. But with that being said, you do want to be careful. Making the light too strong can overpower your subject and light more of the scene than what you really want, especially because you're going to be opening your shutter. Your highlights are really going to be blown out if you use too intense of a light. But there's one more tip here that ties all these together in order for you to take your photos to the next level, and that's incorporating elements of nature and using props. Incorporating elements like fog, smoke, water, leaves, stuff like that into your images can help add a touch of organic unpredictability. I think the best case that I can show of this is a Halloween party that I shot. Everyone was dressed up, everyone was looking absolutely awesome, but there was this one particular girl who actually hired me to shoot the party, who was dressed up as a witch. It is still one of my most favorite shots I've ever taken. It just looks awesome. The vibe and the lighting, it's just, all of it is just absolutely awesome. Don't get me wrong, I also took some fairly standard shots of the night, but just those moments where you're able to actually use props and kind of start to make photos instead of take photos is just something that is unbeatable. Now you can get as creative as you want with this. You can use spray bottles, you can use leaves, you can literally use anything that you can think of as props, but you don't want to overdo it. Adding elements in just for the sake of it is a distraction. You want it to enhance your scene, not hinder it. I got a bonus tip here. Tip number 6, don't ignore the editing process. There's something to be said about the raw versus edited argument, and some people like to get everything right in camera straight away, do no post-processing whatsoever, where others love to heavily edit their photos, and that includes me. This is such a controversial thing that I had someone message me on Instagram and comment on a bunch of my stuff saying that you shouldn't edit your photos and that it's trash and all that lovely stuff. And I even made a short form video about it. I for one love the editing process. It's kind of like therapy. You chuck on some music and just edit to your heart's content. When it comes to the post-processing phase, you can take a relatively boring looking image and turn it into something absolutely mind-blowing. And that's what I love about post-processing. That's what I love about editing, is that you get to be an artist again. When it comes to editing your photos, there is an infinite amount of possibilities, but that doesn't mean you should do all of them. It's incredibly easy to overdo it. Taking an image that looks like this and overdoing the edit, well, it can ruin the vision that you have. And while art is subjective, there is stuff that is just bad. Take this for example. These are some of the photos I first took when I was starting out in photography and really getting my hands dirty with editing processes and compositions and stuff like that. And these photos are trash. That doesn't mean I'm not proud of them, because I was very much stepping out of my comfort zone. It's just not good. We all have those days, those times, especially when starting out, when we're thinking we're doing something super great, and then you can only look back on it with professional eyes or with more mature eyes, and it doesn't look as good as you remember. So don't overdo the editing process. Sometimes less is more. Some photos don't need a crazy edit. Some photos just need a simple exposure adjustment and maybe play around with the S-curve a little bit, and you're golden. Another thing that can really help you in your editing process is using presets. The goal of Lightroom presets is to, as the name sounds, give you a predetermined look. If you have a paid version of Lightroom, you have access to Adobe's adaptive presets, which uses AI to help edit your photos. Their main goal is not just to give you a consistent look, but to help you overhaul and make your editing process just so much quicker. The only issue with universal presets is that they do need some basic adjustments, but apart from that, they're pretty damn golden. I have linked in the description a 70 plus preset bundle pack, which will help you overhaul and speed up your editing process. I also have a bunch of free presets available as well, so you might want to check them out if you're not looking to spend some cash but are looking to support the channel. Have you tried any of these tips before? If you have, make sure you tag me at Adventures with Marley on Instagram. I'd love to see your work. But just because we are done here does not mean that the adventure is over. Click right here to see my last chaotic photography adventure, and click on my face to subscribe, and I'll see you in this one here.